Ladies and gentlemen, today's guest, Chase Noland Smith, a.k.a. Chase Noland. But if you look him up, Chase Smith, Chase Noland. I'm actually so excited for this conversation, just to paint a little bit of a backstory and tee it up a little bit for everybody. So Chase you're our account executive. You wear so many hats here at Ascent Digital. But it's funny, like when I look back, and I don't even know how long I've known you now, probably a couple years, probably like 2 years, probably right about.
Just about, yeah.
And I want to share a story and then some anecdotes of why I'm so excited for this conversation.
All right, talk it up.
I feel like you didn't give me a choice but to hire you. Like you saw that you wanted to work for Ascent Digital, and then you made it happen, which is really cool. And it tells a lot about you and who you are as a person and things like that. But for everybody listening, Chase basically applied to every single position we had open. You even were applying to be like an executive assistant and all this stuff. And
get a foot in the door, Ben.
Gotta get a foot and came in, showed up so many times, did the interviews, submitted the resumes, whatever, followed up, to the point that I think we actually ended up creating the account executive position. I remember I called you and I was like, what do you think about if we went kind of this route or this hybrid role or whatever? Yeah. But it was just fun to like think back on those days because, I still don't know what I'm doing from a, entrepreneur perspective. I'm learning as I go. But it's guys like you and it's interactions like that give me hope as a business owner that like somebody wants to be a part of this, somebody's hungry enough. And it also spoke so much to your character of like when you saw something that you wanted, you were going to make it happen. And at the time I didn't know you from Adam. In fact, it's funny, your headshot, which we're going to get a new one on our website soon.
Oh, we need it so bad.
But it's it's so clear that like you had just moved from California. You've even got the surf vibe and aesthetic going and all that stuff.
I had like a shark tooth necklace. Yeah. My hair was down to my shoulders.
The long hair. Oh, yeah. But, it's cool. And then, throughout the last few years of working together, there's been some times when you and I have had what I'll call windshield time together, where we've been driving together from, whether it's from a shoot and back or, meeting a client that's far away or coming back from a conference or whatever it might be. And we just get chatting and I'm like, oh my gosh, there's all these parallels with our stories and our mindsets and backgrounds and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So anyway, all of that to say, I'm so excited to be able to pick your brain because I also don't feel like I've had the chance to like really dive in on your personal story and your personal journey. I mean, obviously we talk all the time, from a professional capacity. So there's so many things I want to ask you, but to start and to kind of paint the picture, I'd love just like a general, overview of your background. I know that you had moved to Durango pretty recently, a couple of years ago. Before that, you were in California, but I know that there's, quite a bit of story between now and then.
Oh, yeah.
Do you mind humoring me and kind of walk me through, how you ended up here? Because that's the other thing that's noteworthy about this is that you moved to Durango with no job.
No job, really no home. We came here sight unseen. So
it's crazy.
I know it's which I've gotten pretty used to because I've moved around a lot, kind of how you said. So it all started one fresh October morning. I came to. I'm just kidding. So I graduated college at Indiana University back in 2013. Well, 2014. It was that December of 2013, but graduated in 2014. And after that, I like had this perception of like I just want to be wearing a tie every day and like really like killing it with sales and stuff like that because I graduated with a marketing degree, but I wanted to just almost elevate myself to make my parents proud was like a big part of it, but kind of live a lifestyle that's just kind of what in my head was like, you've made it, kind of thing. And at the age of 23, I mean, like, you made it is like what you've watched off of like, the Entourage and stuff like that, where you're like, again, wearing ties every day. And so I got into a really serious sales career I was there for 2 years and I was selling merchant services, so transactional credit cards with a pretty large company. And I started making that dream come true for me to be wearing that tie every day. But the less luxurious part of it, and I know you know this too because you were in sales.
I'm laughing so hard because it just quick, and I'm going to try to not do this the whole.
No, you're good. Get in here.
But right when I graduated college, same thing, and I want to talk about the parents proud thing too. But suit and tie, enterprise rent-a-car, man, and I had made it. I remember I bought an old I bought a Mitsubishi Eclipse, soft top convertible, and I was commuting to Farmington and back every day in my shirt and tie. And little did I know, though, so far from like made it. Now that I 15 years later. But anyway, it's not about me. But what a funny. There's another parallel that I was unaware of.
Bring it in and interrupt any time because it is really uncanny how our lives are very similar.
It's wild,
like that.
Yeah.
So
even just the perception of success, like I don't know if your experience was anywhere similar to mine, but it was when I look back, some of the most unhappy years of my life, but I had the suit and tie.
Couldn't agree more. Yeah. Well, it's like the suit and tie perception, but I think even I'll go back to it, but even like now, and I realized this, like, especially after I moved out of Indiana, where I'm originally from, the real dream is to wear jeans and a t-shirt every day. Like, go in comfortable. And I just, at that time was just like very fixated on, I gotta, like you said, my idea of success was pretty arbitrary because, again, I'm coming out just being like, I want to make money, I want to get the dream car, I want it. So anyway, I had that sales career, had it for 2 years, and then my life started getting very miserable. Just kind of how you said, where I literally had 3 phones on me at all times. 2 phones that were for work, and then 1 phone that was personal. But I had to have them on me at all times because sometimes it's pretty serious if a business can't take money. And so anytime those phones rang, it was bad. And those phones rang often enough for me to be like, oh my gosh, this is just so much. It's really encompassing my entire life. It's elevating my stress levels. I mean, at the end of it, I was just like every day just thinking like, should I just quit today? And then I'd keep going.
What were the indicators? Walk me through. I understand, like, definitely the evolution and not feeling happy and, like, realizing that that's not the epitome of success and these things like that. But specifically, what impacts into your life, your health, your relationships, whatever, made you realize that, like, this path wasn't the path that you wanted to be on?
Yeah, so I think one was I was in my car 8 hours a day, not working, and then trying to do 8 hours while working. So my days were just completely packed. So that took away my health completely because I'm sitting down the whole time. I'm eating junk food on the road. I'm drinking more than my body weight in coffee. And I could just feel it like inside me, just kind of like withering away this person that, like, when I first got the job, thinking like, I did it, I made it. And then I started realizing I was like, this is physically hurting me. I played rugby in college, which is an A-level sport at Indiana University. So I was very, very much in shape. I mean, the Olympics are going on right now. And if you see the rugby players on there, I mean, like, they are all just completely fit people. And that got taken away from me. I couldn't make time for myself. So that was one huge indication. 2, and I know you had this too, so you can chime in as well, but I've always had this ambition that even, like, especially a corporate job that you're in the car all the time, that I was just like, especially when you're in a car, like you said, you were commuting, those times in the car, I'm like either listening to a podcast or I'm just listening to myself. And I'm just going like, I just realized I have these huge dreams out of my hometown, out of my home state, out of my just wanting to, again, just be punching numbers all the time and signing contracts. I mean, I wanted to grow something out of myself. Somewhere I feel like now lies with startups. I really like working for smaller companies and not corporate companies because you have a larger voice. In a corporate company, I had like 3 bosses, and it was a meeting with them every day, every morning, and it was like, stay your track, keep your head down, keep doing what you're doing, and there was no like, let's grow something together, And everyone knows, especially if you've been following Ben's podcast, but Ben is a very inspirational person where every day it's a new slogan that he brings in. It's also the same ones of, what's the one every morning? It's today's the big day, and always have to give the same response that it's finally here.
I was going to say, I'm not that unique since there's a Ben Bingo card, floating around. But tell me more about that, because I relate to that so much I remember in my enterprise days and the way that my schedule was there, I'll never forget it. I made $13.50 an hour.
Yeah.
The job was in Farmington, New Mexico. I lived in Durango, Colorado. Suit and tie, 6 days a week, and I had an hour commute each way each day. So I spent 12 hours per week just commuting, and then 60 hours a week working. So I was doing 70, 75-hour weeks easily, 6 days a week.
Well, and something that you've told me on that windshield time is like you would go in with a suit and tie, but you're still washing cars.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Washing, you name it. Yeah. Washing cars, vacuuming, the whole thing. But the drive time for me was where I had also a lot of my think time. And it's when I realized like this isn't who I want to be, and I'm just fascinated because I think we have very similar personalities in that sense of like, those were somewhat critical moments for me because I definitely could have seen myself sort of buying in on the corporate dream, the corporate hustle. Like Enterprise had these 6-year, 6-figure promises that if you stuck to the job for 6 years, you'd make 6 figures. I'd end up having to move to Albuquerque, and I'm such an optimist. I remember like telling my wife like it wouldn't be that bad. Like there's these things there, and you can do this there, and whatever. And for me, a lot of what started eating at my soul was the physical health, much like you, and my hobbies went away.
Yeah,
I didn't have any time for the stuff that filled me up. And at the time, it was a lot of hunting and outdoor adventures and some stuff like that.
You like lose your identity almost.
Yeah, and the drive time for me was when I also had that think time. But you had mentioned these big dreams, like these big aspirations. I'm curious if at that stage in your life that you knew, like if you were aiming for something, like those dreams were real and tangible and you had something in mind, or if you just had a sense that this wasn't it and that you needed to go find it. Like walk me through the mindset of, because I'd imagine so you're 26 now for conversation, making good money, working hard. You've got the, suit and tie, for all intents and purposes, you've made it. You've done it.
Filled the picture a little bit.
And it's early, like I think a lot of times people get to that point 10 years in, 12 years in, 15, whatever. I want to understand the thought process 2 years in when you mentioned these big dreams of what that looked like. Like, was it something specific or just that you knew this wasn't it?
No, I get it. And I'd say it's a little bit of a mix of both. I think mostly it was just that, again, like that ambition was running rampant in me. So it wasn't like, I need to shift to this separate niche of a job or this completely different industry. I was just thinking like, I'm just getting muted a lot of like I can go and get a contract signed and all this stuff, but there's no creativity with my job. There was nothing that made me feel really inspired about my job. Essentially I was just monetarily consumed with like, okay, like I'm able to pay my bills and then some, and start reaching in different places, but at a cost of just like you said, I lost
your soul.
Exactly, yeah, your soul. And I was really building my life around my job. And once I realized that, and then again I was listening to these inspirational podcasts all the time. And they were just really motivating me, like teaching me what real success is. It's not the bank account, it's you. It's how you feel success of like, your health. It could be your love life. It could be your hobbies. It could be anything like that. But I was so consumed by what I was currently doing that I just didn't have anything. So it was kind of like a bird that just grew his wings and it's in the nest and it's looking down and it's like, the nest is pretty nice, there's food coming in still. But I was like, I need to see more. I need to see more of the world, especially. Because luckily the job I did have had me traveling quite a bit. So that one particular place that it took me to that I really loved was Aspen, Colorado, which was my first journey to Colorado for a long stint. And after that visit, I came back home. It was around Christmas time, and I was like celebrating with my family Christmas, and my phone was just ringing off the hook, and my family literally looked at me and said, like, put it away, just stop. And that's when I realized, I was like, I literally can't, but I can make this stop.
Yeah.
There's just a journey. There's an exit strategy. So that's when, especially when I saw my family telling me to stop, like, I knew as much as I was trying to build this up for for them to like be like, hey, my son made it, he's doing these things, like whatever they would say to their friends or whatever. But I realized they're not seeing it like that, and I'm not seeing myself like that. And so it shifted. So
because another thing we have in common is sort of this desire to, make our parents proud.
Oh yeah.
And I've got a whole, we could have a whole therapy session on that. But interesting so just kind of curious, the weight of that, like the influence of the desire to make your parents proud, and knowing that this path wasn't accomplishing that, how much of your decision, how much like weight did that give in your decision to like pursue other paths versus how much was, came from within and sort of those internal motivators?
Yeah, it was always internal, and it was really just that one perspective that I saw, but it was the straw that broke the camel's back, essentially.
Like, that was enough to say, okay,
yeah.
Now I don't, my parents aren't even,
exactly, yeah.
There's nothing else.
Which, like growing up, especially with my dad, that is close to impossible. And then as I get older, and I think we both probably see this, I realized as an adult, they like, as much as I wanted to make them proud as if they were like on this pedestal or whatever, I am just an adult just like them, and they are going through just as much as I am. Yeah. I mean, my dad had a job at the time. He was working hard. He was spending his life, and I realized like it's not me wanting to make them like essentially proud like my son made it. I just want them to know like I'm happy, and that's what I realized like that Christmas. I was like, you know what, like I'm not making them happy through me. And they can see it.
Yeah.
And I thought they just wanted to see, the suit and tie, as we've said, the nice car and stuff like that. But it wasn't. They just essentially wanted to see, like, I could have probably had a bartending job my whole life, and if I was happy, they would have been happy.
They'd be happy. Yeah. I've had Doug Miller on a couple of times, and one of the things that he's talked about is defining what our core values are, and then aligning our life so that it's in conjunction with those core values.
Yeah.
And if we're living a life that's aligned with our core values, that in and of itself is success.
Exactly.
And I loved it because it reframed our definition of success. Like, you think that there's this picture of success, money, car, house, whatever, career, title, all that stuff. And the older I've gotten and the more experience I've had, the simplest way to define success is happiness. And I think that that's what's cool about his definition of it is it's like, if you're living a life that's aligned with those core values, you'll be happy, and that's successful.
Yeah.
Assuming that you've got this base level at least. Of,
right.
You're not starving and those things.
Straight
but
up.
It's interesting. I think it's fascinating how quickly you learned that though. Because I jumped from one corporate job to another, and then I spent 10 years in that corporate job, but it was definitely a way different, structure. Like I was happy until the end when the stress evolved.
Yeah.
But so you decide finally, like, okay, to stick with your analogy.
Yeah.
I'm gonna fly the nest.
Time to take off. And by the way, as this my life progressed, I wouldn't be who I am today without those journeys of like being incredibly unhappy. Because if I maybe landed a startup job, I would have still had this like in my mind, that corporate job though. I mean, that's where the money's at, and I'm like super, super fortunate I got to be so miserable, if that makes sense. And
wait, say that again. So fortunate that I got to be so miserable.
Exactly.
Love
yeah.
it.
And in life, I mean, we're just going to see so much misery, but and I'll kind of get into that later on too, but those low points are really the places where you define those next high points.
Yeah.
Because I mean, like those low points are when you're the most vulnerable, when you're the most shaky, the most like ready to just make a huge, huge move for yourself. That propels you to whatever that next stage is, and hopefully it's a happier stage. And typically it is. Fortunately, again for me, I've been able to push myself the true distance. But like I actually love those low points a lot. So
yeah, and it's interesting because those low points I think do trigger action.
Action, exactly.
I'm gonna butcher it, but somewhere I saw a saying that was basically to the point where the misery of stagnant has to be greater than the fear of change.
Oh yeah,
like
100%.
Because the change is going to be scary. You just have to get to a point where staying is miserable enough that it's more miserable than the fear of actually making those changes.
Yeah,
and it's funny that you bring that up too, because when I look back on my life, some of the moments I'm most grateful for are the hardest ones. Like I remember when I was in college at Fort Lewis, I didn't have a car. I had a really rocky relationship with my parents at the time. I was working my way through school. I was, working full-time student and whatever. And in the dead of winter, I was working at the meat counter at Albertsons. God. And I would have to walk to and from my shift because I didn't have a car. And there were some lonely, dark, dead of winter nights walking back from Albertsons, back to my dorm room to sleep in the 10 by 10 concrete room with with the roommate playing loud music or whatever to go do it again the next day. But I look back on those times very fondly of it forged me into somebody who had confidence and resilience and these abilities to solve problems and independence and all these great things that I almost took it with a sense of pride of
100%.
I'm proud of. It sucks that I'm here by myself. They were some of my most lonely, months of my life, but also some of the times I'm the most proud of.
Oh, 100%.
So you fly the nest.
All right, so the nest is coming. All right, so I called my boss, let him know the exit strategy is happening. Give me my 2 weeks. That gives me 2 weeks to figure something out.
So you had no plan. You submitted 2 weeks with no.
No, I'd put out resumes and stuff like that, but there was nothing clear. But what was clear was I was living in Chicago at this time, and rent's either going to get paid or I'm going to move. And so again, I looked back as Aspen, that trip that I was like, man, if I could get over there, I'd be so happy, so happy. So I ended up reaching out to Skico, and they had a marketing position open. It was survey marketing, which survey marketing is essentially taking customers' feedback and instituting a plan for them to be happier coming back, to stick around, and to spend more money, obviously. So they had that position open, and so I talked to them. They were like, no, we need someone that's local, la, 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 la. And I said, I'll be local next week if you want me to, whatever it takes. And they were like, okay, well, we have to go through an interview process. I'm like, let's do it. Let's push. And so luckily, I don't know what they were thinking, honestly, because once I had that opportunity, I looked at my parents and I said, I'm moving to Colorado, Aspen, Colorado. They're like, when? I was like, in 5 days. And they're like, you just quit your job and now you're just going to go? And I said, I will make it happen. I know I can. I have, again, it's that persistence, that true just integrity to want to make something still. And I had all that my own windshield time of just having that ambition I was craving something new and fresh. And so I moved out to Aspen, Colorado, and then within 2 days I landed the job, thankfully. So I was huge weight off my back.
You moved to Aspen without the job?
Without the job.
Wow.
Yeah. It's pretty gnarly.
That is incredible.
Yeah. It's Talk
about full send. It
was, and truly, I got there, and that same day I landed, I went to their office in the best suit I had and sat down, which by now I know, Aspen, Colorado, don't wear a suit in the ski industry. Are you kidding me? So I sat down with him, and I just kind of the same I did with you, to be quite frank. I said, I'm here for that job. I just moved here to work with you guys. I'm very serious. I'm very committed. And the guy just looked at me and was just like, that is crazy. He's like, that's crazy enough that I do want to hire you. Clearly want this job, because anyone else that walked in that door that was local maybe had different options or whatever it is. I came there with one goal, and they realized this guy's going to give us the most because he made the biggest leap to be here. So I got the job. So survey marketing during the ski season, and then helping with the X Games marketing while that was happening as well. So
how cool.
It was otherworldly. So.
Yeah. And were you happy?
That honestly was one of the happiest moments of my life. Because I stayed there for 3 seasons and I really enjoyed it. It was great. I could take 6 months to go back home and I would go work at a resort that was back at home. So it'd be 6 months in Aspen, then 6 months living at my parents' place, and then going back and forth. And really, like, Aspen time it really showed me. I was like, by the way, they are a corporate company, but they have small, very cultural kind of groups. So the marketing department and then the survey marketing, that it felt very small,
right,
which was really nice. So yeah, it really was some of the happiest moments of my life doing that. But I was also young. I was single. I just didn't really, I was going out every night. I was just really taking life by the horns and in a new place. So
yeah, and just living spontaneously and
oh yeah.
Yeah. I cannot believe that you moved to Aspen without a job.
Oh, it gets crazier, Ben. Let me tell you. And by the way, so when you moved to Durango, you moved here for college, right?
Yep.
Did your parents ever just like keep fishing for like when you're moving back home, like when you're gonna be close by? Was there anything like that?
Not that I remember. I think it was pretty clear that once I left, I was gone.
Okay, cool.
And I left. Yeah, I left right after high school. Obviously, I was 18. Did my freshman year, and then I moved back for the summer in between. I moved back for like 3 months. For summer break that first year, sure. And then never. And actually, that didn't even work out. I was there for 4 or 5 weeks, and then ended up back. So
you can't stay away from this place, man.
Yeah, I think it was pretty clear. Similarly, I mean, I think that my independence was obvious.
Yeah.
For many reasons. That it was like So no, I never really did. Did you? Were your parents kind of wondering when you were going to come back?
Well, so that 6 months on, 6 months off, like I would always come home for 6 months and, right. they were always like, enjoy your Aspen adventure, but,
and then come stay.
Yeah. But this is kind of a Midwestern, I think it's kind of cultural for Midwesterners, but like I would say most people don't ever leave their home.
Right.
And when I say most, I'm saying like 80% plus probably. And a fact about my own family, over, I think it's 5 generations, we've all stayed within 100 diameter, like a 100-mile diameter of where we all started.
That's wild. So
yeah.
My family is very, very similar. Maybe not all of them, but in the Salt Lake City Valley is essentially where both sides of my family for generations have always been. When we moved to Colorado, which was a whole nother whole nother therapy session and story, but we moved to Parker, Colorado in 2006. And we were kind of the first like family that moved. It was my mom's first time ever living outside of the Salt Lake Valley.
Oh my gosh.
And she had 4 kids and, full blown adult. It was her first time ever living outside of the Salt Lake Valley. So kind of interesting. I understand the culture components of that. Like I've got family members that, are within blocks of their childhood homes and like friends and all that stuff. It's very which there's probably pros and cons to that. I think it's good and bad. Like you end up really tight with those communities. You also though I think limit your perspectives. It's somewhat of a there's some isolation there that happens in terms of like influence and
100%.
Perspectives and things that we explore. Probably lesser now with technology and social media and stuff.
That's a really good point too.
But with our parents' generation, for sure.
Oh yeah.
That's all they knew.
Yeah, and I think you're so right. Like even I have family that literally, it's next door neighbors with family, and I'm not saying just like one. I'm saying I think there's a 3-house stretch with 3 of my family members all living like as neighbors,
right?
Like direct next door neighbors. And I don't think that I wouldn't ever say like it's better or worse to stay there or go. It's always individual, kind of like what you want to do. But I definitely noticed like when I was in Indiana for most of my life, I had Indiana ideologies, and when I started moving around a lot more, my mind and my honestly like my open-mindedness for the world changed. It just shifted. I started seeing different ways of life, from poor to rich to people grinding really hard to people not, people having things handed to them their whole life, people who haven't. And like, so it really like let me see a bigger story of this world than I think I would have if I just stayed in small town Indiana.
Yeah.
So,
No, and there's so much value in that, I think, because one is it gives you some idea of what to pursue, like what is your formula for happiness? What are those core values for you? But also the more that I've traveled or, interacted with other people from whether it's different cultures or social economic backgrounds or whatever it might be, this more similar I find we all are too from a humanity level.
Good point.
Like so many, we're all at the end of the day, we
all bleed red.
Yeah. Like for, anyway, it kind of takes some of we're not as different as you think.
That's a really good
But then
point.
there's also so many differences. It's just that like they're more surface level, type things. But it also gives you some ideas. I mean, one of the best things I think that ever's happened for my parents is they started traveling. They go to India every year for humanitarian trips, and they've been all over the place to Tonga and all these places. And I think that has really, really influenced their world views.
Yeah,
is interacting with those other cultures, and I think that's so cool that you got to see that independently and young. In a very wide variety way because you're kind of gathering data, like you're seeing these potential paths, these potential like formulas for happiness or success or whatever. And then you're getting to like gather all the data and then decide which one is right
100%.
for you, which is what a cool, as a parent, I selfishly, like obviously I never want my kids to leave Durango, but as a friend, as an adult, everybody should do that. Like everybody should at least see things, experience things, and like get those new perspectives that I think definitely we get in these bubbles, no matter where we grow up.
It just blows my mind that your parents traveled like late in life to go do those things. My parents still haven't left the country. I think they've been to like Cancun, but like they have never left the country. My dad came to Colorado for the first time during last Christmas time.
And now you and your dad, you're on a mission. Aren't you and your dad trying to see all the national parks?
Yeah. So like my dad's always been very limited. He's a very big homebody. And it's funny because he's extroverted sometimes. I think everyone, my extrovert would classify themselves as like extroverted introverts kind of. But he truly just like stayed in one area because that's just, again, it's kind of the culture. Not a lot of people travel where I'm from. So they didn't really feel the need to, and they were also had a lot of fear based on it. When I traveled to Mexico a lot, and my mom is just losing her mind saying like, the cartels and da-da-da. I'm like, there's more than cartels and crime in Mexico. There's beauty, there's culture, there's food, there's all this great stuff. And to this day, I can't convince her to anything other than that. But
so what I want to know, and again, some similarities. I definitely broke some molds in my family.
Definitely.
Religious molds, culture molds, like all these things. I was definitely a black sheep for a while. Now I have amazing relationships with everybody in my family, and it's been a wonderful evolution and growth journey, for that together.
Yeah. And by the way, your parents are awesome.
They're amazing.
Yeah, I love your parents.
You definitely took your own path. Like, the mold of, the Smith family of, whatever it might be. And I'm not saying good or bad. What I'm fascinated or curious about is if you have any insight as to why or where that came from for this desire and kind of the mentality that you had to, and don't let me put words in your mouth, but kind of say like, I don't really care what you think. I'm going to go do these things because it's what I want to do. I think there's a lot of people out there that have a desire to go their own path, or, I know and I've got many friends that I know would be happier doing something else, but they're doing it this way because that's what their family does, or this is the way it's always been done, or this is what we do. This is where whatever. I've got stories after stories of families that you
graduate high school, you get married, you go to college, you get a job, you stay for 50 years, and then you die.
and even there's these familial norms or cultures of even job industries and physical locations of where we live and whether or not we go to college or whatever. There's so many things, and I really do think that there's a whole lot of people that have a desire to get out of that path, but stay in it because there's pressure. Like and I don't know, the nuances or, your family dynamic, but like for me, breaking the mold was abrasive early on.
Oh yeah.
Now it's gotten exponentially better, but early on it was like, I had pushback. Definitely. Because I was the first guy that says, I don't know that that's going to work for me. Yeah. I'm going to do it this way, which is hard. And of course it's hard. For generations we've done it this way, or it's looked like that. Anyway, all of that to say, I would be fascinated to hear if you have any idea where that came from you, where your mindset was, or even at least like the driving force to go your own path, knowing that there's going to be resistance.
Yeah, so growing up, I wouldn't say like I resisted authority by any means, but I definitely would make my own decisions and do my own decisions and learn through mistakes more than like, what people told me. And I don't know if that was really something that was developed in me. I doubt I was born with it, but I always was a little bit different than everyone else in my family like that, where I didn't high school was really tough for me because I just didn't want to go every day. And I went through a period of skipping school and all this stuff. And like my parents just being like, why? And I'm like, I just don't want to. Like I get like that's how we're supposed to, but I just don't. And luckily, once I got to college, I got my act together and I went to school and I enjoyed it. But I've always had that sense of adventure, trying something new. And I, from even a young age, I always wanted to like plan of going somewhere else and checking it out for a week. And, usually with spring breaks and stuff like that, especially in college, I'd just go somewhere either by myself or bring a friend and we'd go find somewhere new, and which wasn't normal, where I'm from really. So I don't know really where it came from, but I know I just always kind of had that, like, you can't tell me what to do. I'm going to do it my way. And it wasn't super abrasive with my family, but I always kind of hinted to them being like, yeah, I'll move back, when I'm done. And I mean, now
you were leaving some hope on the table.
Yeah, hope's all gone and they know it now. The only one that thinks I'm still moving back is my grandmother.
Right. And let her think that.
Exactly. Yeah. So, but yeah, so that even with the Aspen adventure, of me doing 6 months on, months back home, my parents loved having that 6 months with me. But then I decided I wanted to go further away. I wanted to go even further west. And so after at this time, I was working in a restaurant on my 6 months. I was a restaurant manager. And I always loved the hospitality industry because I love people and I love making people happy. And people are, well, not all the time, obviously, but most of the time when they're at a restaurant, they're stoked to be there. Right. And you can only make that experience better. And I always had that fine attuned, like, I'd walk up to a table, how's everything? And they're like, oh, everything's great. We would like this. And I would make their night even more special by just trying to figure out how to go above that. So hospitality was always a great part of it, and why I feel account management fits me so well, because that's all I try to do every day with Ascent Digital is, if someone is having any problems or, if they're really stoked on something, we still try to elevate where they're at currently. And it's a great part of my job. I love having those meetings with people, even if they call me and they're kind of frustrated, how to create the dialogue to push them in a better place, but also how to improve myself and my team and be able to direct traffic a little bit and get them back in that stoked phase. And I would say that's one of our top things here is that we have great retention with our clients.
One of my favorite things about having you on our staff is that we use the word stoked regularly now.
Like, a lot of California lingo coming in.
I even now, it's like a normal thing for me now. I use the word stoked.
I know.
I'll even say it to clients. I'm like, I'm stoked to be doing
this,
which is it's such a new thing for me. I never use the word. And I come from a background of snowboarding culture.
Oh, there's stoke there.
Oh, tons of stoke. But it's a mentality. Like we can bring stoke to the to our jobs. Okay, but anyway, so further away, California.
Yeah, so California was in my kind of in my crosshairs, and so I was looking at Tahoe and Napa. Tahoe because mountains, and I've already kind of had that experience, but I wanted to go further west, and then Napa because basically I wanted on my resume to be like, wow, this guy worked in Aspen and he worked in Napa, these like elevated places. So I was like, this is like kind of the direction I want to go and kind of rebuild my resume with work experience. So I ended up moving to Napa. I got a job at a golf course. I can't think of it off the top of my head, but they do the Safeway Open. It's a pretty large, very Great resort with golf course on it. So it's a golf resort kind of thing. So I moved there. And, I pack up my car. I'm driving out west this time. I usually flew.
Do you have a job at this point? Or are you moving again with
I
no
do
job?
have a job
Okay,
this time,
okay.
but you're going to love how this shifts. So I pack up my car and, to give my parents the empty promise, I'll be back when I'm back, and so load up the car, drive out to Napa, California. And the next day after I moved there, I had a place already lined up and everything. So I went to the resort I was going to be working at, and they're like, we just want you to check out the resort today. We're having, this was actually during the Safeway Open. And they're like, we're having this golf tournament. We have a concert this evening. So I'm just like watching golf, like going up, meeting all the staff, like really enjoying myself. And that concert that night was in concert. And Weezer's like a great band. I love Weezer. Beverly Hills, that's where I want. Yeah. So I'm doing this, and I mean, in my head, I'm watching Weezer, and I'm in a new place, Napa, California. And I'm like, this is going to be the best job ever. And so that night I went home, and I remember waking up around 3 a.m. and it smelled like barbecue to me. And I was like, man, the Californians really get it at night, And then I get a text from my dad at 5:30, and then he called me, and I said, hey, what's up? And he said, there's fire all around you right now. And I was like, what? And I've never experienced this before, but so I went outside my house and I looked at the sky, and it was glowing red. So in 2017, the Napa, California fires went rampant, and I was in the middle of it.
What?
I was just on the edge of getting evacuated from my home. Like, quite honestly, I probably should have. But I woke up that next morning, and I mean, everywhere was smoke. It was smoggy everywhere. And I mean, it's that thick, dense, black smog, and everything around you just see like plumes of fire everywhere. And shout out to the firemen out there, by the way. That has to be some of the most traumatizing and hardest work anyone has to do. And I mean, from San Francisco, everyone came to help with that. And Ben, you're a fireman, so I figured I'd throw that shout out while you're here too. Win some brownie points.
I see what you're doing.
Yeah. So I woke up, and I mean, there's ash all over my car. I mean, it was covered. I had to almost like snow, like wipe it off. There's so much ash. Yeah.
After one night.
After one evening, that's how bad the fires were right by me. And it wasn't just by me. I mean, it spread like wildfire everywhere. Like a lot of places. So many vineyards closed that year. And so my boss called me that morning and said, hey, can you meet us at this cafe? We need to talk about the fires. And I was like, sure. So I go to that cafe, and he said, our resort's burned down.
Right.
You don't have a job. Yeah. So kind of like how Aspen was, California now is like this, where I'm like jobless in a new place, and I have to just figure it out. There's no severance. I didn't really technically start yet.
Right.
So I get back home, and I look at my bank account, and I'm probably drifting around like $200, $300 left in my bank account. So, and Ben, I know you've been through these rough, like if you're lucky not to be in negative, that's a great day.
Right.
Even if it's $5 in your bank account, you're like, I'm not
broke yet.
Yeah, exactly. I love that. So I think I had $300, and that was because travel took a lot, and then bad planning. I mean, I just wasn't ready for that. So I looked at it and said, okay, I'm going to give myself 3 weeks to find a job. How can I maintain and it was ramen and bologna sandwiches, dude. It was eating like nothing, but you make your full-time job
looking for a job.
Exactly. Yep. So I was lucky to land 2 strong leads. One was at a vineyard. It wasn't at a vineyard. It was at a hotel that a vineyard owned. That was like really 5-star quality stuff. And then another one was a brewery. And so I interviewed both places, and as much as I like 5-star dining and all that stuff, very rigid. I could tell there isn't going to be a lot of creativity again, and da-da-da-da-da. And then I went to this brewery, and this guy, his name was Gene. He ended up becoming like a dad figure to me. He was a really great guy, but I had a conversation with him. We just had a conversation. He literally took the keys out of his pocket and threw them to me and said, this is your show then, because he had different restaurants, and he's like, I just need someone to run this one. And I became a general manager of a brewery restaurant, and I just was like, this is where I'm meant to be. and where I can actually improve something. So,
wow.
I know, man.
What I think has been really just remarkable about your story is obviously there's this simultaneous ability to take enormous risks and the resiliency to see it through.
Right.
Like so many, anybody else would have been like, well, okay, that didn't work. I'm headed
Going
home.
back home.
Back to the safe zone, back to the safety net, whatever it might be, where you're like, no, let's figure this out. Like, it's not over yet.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that that's so powerful. I think that that's so cool.
Thanks.
You've also had, it's like, the way that you went and found jobs or, pursued the job in, was it Aspen?
Aspen, yeah.
I was going to say Vail. Aspen, or, the way that you pursued the job here. There's this like tactful tenacity because you're not overbearing because that would just, in fact, I've had people overbear. A lot of people want to work here.
Yeah.
Especially in our creative department. And I've had people like too much, like that now I'm turned off. It's been, you've had this like, I don't know, this balance of, even though you don't have a job or a place to live or whatever, where like you could be desperation moment, you've carried yourself well enough to still get those great opportunities, which I think is also a unique variable in your story, which I think is just it's remarkable.
Persistence, dude. It's before I had that sales job we talked about, I was in a different sales position selling newspapers, but I had this guy, he was a big mentor to me, and he told me this is ring true, not usually for that sales structure, but for finding a job or like, life kind of. He said, sell and keep being persistent until you annoy them, then continue being persistent till you earn their respect.
Yes.
And I wouldn't say that for most sales, like I said, but it made me say like to myself, I need to keep trying until people respect the fact that I'm still here kind of thing. And because you're right, I could have called my parents and been like, hey, I'm coming back home. Everything hit the fan. I'm in a bad place.
It literally burned down.
Literally. And so, I've never really had that off switch of like time to turn in. I've always had that like, how can I figure out a way to make this last long enough to get to that next chapter, essentially. Right.
Yeah.
And so then I was running a brewery, and I did that for 10 months. And this brewery was kind of tucked away in kind of it wasn't like a strip mall, but it was tucked away enough. And it wasn't super inviting. So luckily I had that marketing background. So I figured out we didn't have lunch sales going too great. The evening was fine. And so, printing out to-go menus and literally just driving to every business in town, handing to-go menus and saying, just keep this pinned. First time you guys order, it's free. Then I'd say, can I talk to the CEO or whoever, the manager? And I'd go to them and say, anytime you have a business meeting in lunchtime, I will give you free apps if you come to the restaurant. And they're like, okay, cool. And it worked.
That is incredible.
It was one of my small feats that I still look back to this day going like, I just did it.
Proud of it.
Yeah, exactly. So,
and those are the best jobs too that gave you ownership of it.
Freedom.
I remember when I was working at a golf course in between, and I was the guest services manager, and I had enough ownership to like make some changes and stuff. And I did all these cool things with detailing our members' carts. I made a whole detail program, a whole like detail department and stuff like that was all brand new, and designed these brochures and a pricing structure and a pricing model and like scheduled it in, and
the parallels,
and then a similar thing with like our rental clubs and how they're inventoried and stuff. But I look back on those so fondly because it's like they empowered me to actually make an impact,
100%.
Make a change. One of the things that I love the way you've described these transitions of adventures. I know, we both worked with Ryan Rowe, and I'm hoping he's listening. He subscribes on YouTube. So Ryan,
shout out Ryan.
If you are listening, we miss you. We love you. But
still have your corporate card.
Yeah, you do. But he picked up and left and moved his family to Hawaii. And at the time, I remember telling my wife, like, I'm bummed to lose him, but I also envy the adventure.
100%.
Like there was part of me that was like, I could never do that now. My adventures now look different. like I quit a great job and started a new company, or I run ultras or whatever. Like I have these other adventures still. I still live in a very adventurous life. But in terms of just like up and moving, my roots are so deep here now that part of me envied, this idea of Ryan and his family moving to Hawaii, like of all things, whatever.
Yeah.
I envied that like adventure in him. And so I'm kind of curious, for you, does that sense of adventure, like, do you still feel that sense of adventure longing in your life? Or are you, because now I know, you've got this amazing job in Durango.
It's so good. Best in town.
Job in Durango. But, jokes aside, you are maturing in terms of like your career, but also you've got, a long-term live-in girlfriend and pets and, these things that like
much
things
tougher.
Are settling a little bit. So, but not all the way, so I'm just curious, like, do you still feel that longing for a sense of adventure, or is some of that feel satisfied because you've had such an adventurous, life for, whatever, 15, 20
Forever.
years of adventure. Yeah.
It's a double-edged sword, really. So the adventure is always great because something's always new when you go to it, and you immerse yourself into something completely different, and you can be whoever the hell you want to be.
Yeah.
You can move in and just essentially create your new identity if you really wanted to. I never really took that route. I was always myself, and I was always, happy being myself.
Which is usually the best path, by the way.
Which is, very authentic.
You're good at being yourself.
Right. But the double-edged of that is you always move away from your community. So you're always the person moving in, and once it gets comfortable, you leave. And as much as it seems like you're making friends all over the world, or all over the United States, excuse me, you're essentially losing a lot of relationships too, because if you hang out with someone, let's say every day, and then you move away, obviously that's going to fade, and it's always good to pick back up. But when you stay somewhere for a longevity, like a long amount of time, then you actually create that community of people that love and trust you, and become like your brothers and sisters that aren't from your parents, but like those friendships that you create. So I always thought it was great to do those adventures, and I cherish them, and I'm so proud of myself. And it's what brought me to Durango.
Right.
Was embarking on something new. And but I do look at people with, I wouldn't say it's jealousy, but I definitely see like why people stayed in one place, because they create this amazing bond with a community, and knowing their home, having comfort in home.
Right.
And if you move a lot, you never have a home. I mean, even in the places I lived, it wasn't like I was looking to buy. So it was apartment to apartment to apartment. I'm not investing into myself or my property or anything like that. I'm just paying someone else's loan, and until I go to the next place. And I never got a sense of comfort in a way because of that. But it also gave me the most memorable experiences I've ever had.
Well,
so,
yeah. Pros and cons to everything. I mean, because I look back and like I said, I kind of envy the adventure of, Ryan moving to Hawaii or whatever it might be. The flip side of that is I've been in Durango for 15 years and I've been through some shit with people.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like I've got some deep relationships here that have been forged through, adversity and shared experiences and, all of these things. And it's amazing. It can be tiring from time to time for sure. But, like I can't go to the grocery store without seeing somebody.
Right.
I literally always am going to see someone I know, shake the hand, say hi, whatever it might be. When like my parents visit or whatever, it's always like, who is that? Who is that? I'm like,
I'm the mayor, so.
I just know him from here. I know him from there, whatever.
Right.
I go on my run and I say hi, wave to 3 or 4 trucks, that drive by because of their buddies or whatever.
Actually, share that experience that you just had when you got the 4x4, that guy at the store.
Oh yeah,
because that one was insane when he told me that.
Yeah, a perfect example of business in Durango.
Yeah,
I'm at the local motorsports dealership fun center, buying my side by side. And the other customer at the counter is like, "Oh, you're the Chasing Greatness podcast guy." Yeah. Which for everybody listening, all 8 of you that are listening, it's not like I have a huge audience.
Right,
so
right.
when somebody noticed me, I loved it. I was like so stoked on it. It made my day. I told told my wife about it. I was like so pumped up.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
This guy listened. He knew who I was. Like, can you believe it? Whatever I was geeking
Shout out to the Fun Center. We were not getting sponsored by them, but shout out.
yeah, shameless. And then my septic tank backed up. I had a septic issue at my house. 3 days later, the septic company is hiring, their excavator. And who is it but the guy that was at the counter of the Fun Center on Sunday? And that stuff happens all the time here. All the time. Like we all regularly at the office will say it's all connected.
Oh yeah,
it's all connected.
We went and grabbed lunch at one of our clients' restaurants, and the client we were about to see after lunch was then going to that restaurant, and we just happened to be rubbing elbows with him there. So
right.
It does happen a lot here, and I appreciate that actually.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. But now it's like I got the adventure of life, because a fulfilling life is one that is adventurous. There's no doubt about that. Like
100%.
there is definitely value in the adventure. There's also a value in the community. And so for me, at least now, the adventure has evolved. It's like a business adventure or a literal adventure or whatever it might be. Like I still find ways to fill that adventurous need. But like and moving is not an option for me at this point.
Oh no, I don't advise it.
Yeah, there's no
kids.
way. Yeah.
Well, I mean, like you're right. You've found adventure in ways that you push yourself more than even a quarter of what I would push myself in a way.
Hold on, for everybody listening.
Yeah.
Also, and another thing I admire about you, I meant to mention this in your introduction. So Chase lives 20 miles from the office. How far is your apartment from the office?
I mean, I ride my bike. If it was 20 miles, I'd be losing my mind every day.
Well, how far is it?
So I get about 8 miles of bike riding every day.
Each way?
Each way, yeah. Sorry. So 16.
So I think that's great. And those are these other things about you that I just like admire and look up to is you have made your own decision to commute by bike every day to and from. When we're done with the podcast here, for everybody listening, Chase has to bike home.
And it's 90 degrees out.
But I love it. It's so cool because every morning I see, you're here, you're sweaty, you got your workout in. Those are those things about you that I've been able to observe, for years that, again, are indicative of like this character that's there too, that, this depth, like these decisions, because nobody sees that you're riding your bike to and from work every day. Also, Chase volunteers every Saturday at the Humane Society.
Oh, yeah.
And walks dogs and pets cats. And like, you're trying to think how to, and maybe some of this stuff has come from the adventure, but I was telling my wife, I was describing you to my wife, and I was doing this with affinity. So
I wish I was on the fly on the wall for that conversation.
So, but you have a unique set of identifiers, like you're the things you're into, the music you like, the hobbies you have, the culture you consume, the pastimes you have, the hobbies, whatever. They're all very diverse and unique and not good or bad. Like you just have like, you really like your virtual reality video games.
Big VR guy.
And you love, volunteering at the Humane Society and cycling to work and, listening to music that, I'm not familiar with or whatever. Like these things about you that are very, and I think it's really cool because you had talked about kind of like this idea of I just been me the whole time, or like might as well just be myself. And maybe because what I'm kind of getting at and what I'm curious about is where this confidence has come from, because by nature, because of that, you're very unique. And again, not bad or good. I think good, but you're very unique in terms of your hobbies, the things that you like, and all of these things. Like
right.
You don't fit into a
I'm not an Indiana boy. I'm not a Californian. I'm not a Durango.
Right. Where a lot of people very much identify with a subculture and a culture and like these things. Like this is people like us do things like this. This is our thing. You're just Chase Noland. Like have these variety of things. Do you think that that's come from these different experiences and like kind of piecemealing the things that you enjoy and that make you happy, or is that always because with
that's
that
a good question.
You also have like this confidence too. That's what I was trying to get at is like you're as unique as it comes with confidence and like confidently saying like the only reason you volunteer at the Humane Society is because you want to.
Oh yeah.
Like there's no,
Yeah, I'm not forced.
They're
not court ordered.
The only reason that, whatever these things are,
Yeah.
are purely by choice and because you want to. You march to the beat of your own drum in a very confident way, though.
Thanks, man.
And I want to hear where that has come from or why or the intentionality behind it.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, no one's ever asked me that, so that is a fantastic question.
I'm a decent host.
Yeah, really great. Yeah. By the way, it's a blank piece of paper next to him, so he definitely didn't. He came in with that just off the top of his head. So, so I definitely think there's a lot of it. I think the confidence is probably the biggest part of the moving around so much that's been able to build, because you kind of have to know yourself, and kind of going back just what I was just saying is you kind of go into a town and you're just new, and you can't go in my opinion, you can't go in just like trying to dip your toes into something, like, maybe meet a little bit of people or whatever. You move there because you want the experience of like, what is this place like? What's the food like here? Like, what's the sports like kind of like out here? So I think the confidence came from that. But honestly, the other things around me, like my hobbies or the things I want to put my time into outside of work and outside of sleeping and stuff like that. I mean, people and personalities, they're always created by the personalities around them. I mean, you can cut your own character up as like however you can by consuming and stuff like that. But I see things, and you're about to get a lot of like this too, because you're a part of this. I get close enough with people and start finding what they like. And I've never really considered myself as a follower, but I also have such an open mind to new things that I want to see why someone enjoys something so much. So I ride my bike to work every day because Ben runs at work every day. And, and obviously it's an office job and we get some time to walk around and stuff like that. But predominantly I'm sitting down in a chair and answering phone calls or emails or whatever. But I watched you run every day. And you always came back, and I know you get a high off of it. And, you sit down and you're just going to be more clear, more concise, probably a lot more confident. And I looked at that and I said, why does Ben enjoy that so much? And I personally am not going to run at 90 degrees in the weather in the afternoons like you do.
We almost overdid it today.
Yeah, so I decided to buy a road bike and set a goal to every day ride my bike at least 18 miles. That's just my goal every day, 7 days a week. If I'm traveling, then it's hiking at least 10 miles a week. Or a day, sorry. Which luckily we've got the most beautiful areas around us that is so easy to do.
Yeah.
And you can get a new view every day. It doesn't have to be the same thing. So I really appreciate that. But I'd really develop my interest through other people's eyes.
Yeah.
And Ben, your exercise and your motivation made me realize, because I have a Garmin watch. Again, we're not sponsored, so just a shout out.
Yet.
But I was starting to realize I was getting less than 10,000 steps a day. And that's just a big no-no for health.
Right.
You need to at least get 10,000 steps to be healthy and be able to walk strong 20 years from now and create those habits. And I was starting to lose that. So I was running every morning, and so I'd have to get up at 5:30 in the morning and start my run so I can get back home, shower, and I'd do a little lifting here and there too. But then I bought that bike and I was like, this is how I'm going to exercise. I'm going to ride my bike to and from work every day. And then on the weekends, I'm going to do the same thing, not go to work, but I'd ride my bike. And I've got to tell you, it's changed a lot for me. It is, even my girlfriend, she says, you are in such a better mood, which is such a what was I like before?
Yeah, what are you trying to say?
Exactly. But it's, that is essentially something that I prize because you kind of led me in that direction. Because I don't think if you had the habits that you do, I maybe would have picked it up, but you were the pushing factor of me saying I need to continue my my exercise, or who knows what I'm going to be like in a year. I don't want to get, it's just a preference. So it's no one's worse or better, but I personally don't want to get overweight. I want to be able to ride my bike when I'm 90 years old. I want to surf a wave when I'm 90 years old. I want to be able to go peak something when I'm 90 years old. And that starts yesterday.
Right.
Yeah.
No, I love that because and again, another parallel or similarity is one of the keys to my success has been an ability to observe others and take components of their life that I want to emulate. There's never been the guy that I'm like, I want to do everything he does exactly like that and, be that. But I love when this part of that, or like I love this side of that, these little things and like learning and being very intentional about how I observe people and who I allow to influence me and how.
That's huge.
So that it's like, okay, and so I didn't realize that I was one of those influencers.
I know I should have told you that,
means
but
the world to me.
We've got this time now.
Yeah, but that's cool because I share that. And I think that that's something, for people listening, it's a cool thing to like you start to get a little bit intentional about of. I've got business mentors. I've got physical fitness mentors. I've got play mentors. There's people that I look up to that I want to play more like them. Parenting, finances and investment and, whatever it might be, service. I mean, all these things where, and it's kind of sort of like, and it seems like a lot of that with you too, is it's turned you into your own, you're your own unique person.
Exactly.
But with these intentional like influences that you've decided logically to say, okay, cool, that clearly works. I'm going to take a little bit of that and put that into my life. I'm going to take a little bit of that, put that into my life.
Exactly.
I love that. Yeah, that's such a cool way to experience. And again, what a great way to like give longevity and benefits to these adventures that you've been able to live.
Yeah.
Because all the people you've met, all the perspectives you've gotten to see, all these different, it's like data entry.
It is. And you're so right about like filtering that who you let in and out with like what you're looking for. And I mean, because I've had a lot of toxic people around me before too, and I mean everyone really does. But even those are good ways of me going like, well, I don't want to. And again, just for me personally, but like I had friends that would like smoke weed every day or something like that, and I just saw how much it affected them and how much their mind kind of drifted away from them, and like even those toxic things, I go like, that's not what I want to do.
Right.
And I mean, like, it just, it goes both ways. And, I think it just like, again, the people around you are really who develop like who you are. And I've just been really fortunate to have like fun people around me all the time and really caring people and very energized, people that have good work ethics. But honestly, something that I really like is like how I brought Stoke here, it reverses itself too.
Right. Like you make an impact too.
Exactly. And that's a huge thing. Like I like to, when I do move somewhere new, like I just moved to Durango, I want to bring a piece of me with it. Like obviously I'm not trying to shift any cultures or anything like that. I want to immerse myself into it, but I also want to be my own person and, influence as much as I can in a positive way.
Yeah.
So, and that goes into, the animal shelter, the Humane Society. That's something that it makes me happy, and obviously it makes the dogs happy. But it's something I'm proud of, and I tell people I'm like I get so much out of this, and I've gotten friends to sign up for it and stuff like that. So it's just great. But yeah, that's so personalities. It's tough to really gauge, but the confidence definitely came from losing a job once I got to a place and figuring it out.
Once the job started,
exactly.
Yeah. We'll have another. I have a story I also lost a job before it started. Yeah. So, but we'll save it for another day.
All right.
Chase, I want to thank you so much for bringing the Stoke.
Yeah.
For, bringing all of these great, rich experiences that you've been able to have and these adventures and things like that. And then this continued intentionality that you have of, still improving, still being better, learning different things and contributing in different ways. But like you had said, also, I want to thank you for bringing that back and also, influencing those around you and things like that. I mean, I've seen over and over again the impact that you've made on our company culture, the impact that you've made on our clients, the impact you've made on our softball team, the world's greatest softball captain. But, all of these things, and you need to know it that you are making an impact, and all of these intentional things that you're doing they matter, and it's trickling, and it's impacting the world around you. And riding your bike to and from work every day is inspiring somebody. Volunteering at the Humane Society every weekend is inspiring somebody. You know, the passion and the care that you take with your job is inspiring people. And so I just want you to know that and hear it, that like you really are inspiring by example and making huge impacts on all of these communities that we've gone. You know, obviously I hope that we get you for as long as possible.
Yeah.
But I also just think it's so neat to see just somebody with the rich background that you've developed throughout it, and how intentional of a filter you've had on how that has changed your perspective, and then your ability to take that and impact, you know, the other people that are around you. So thank you for the time today, but more than that, thank you for living the life that you're living and making the impact that you're living. I'm just so dang glad to know you. I forgot my symbolic shirt gift.
Oh, I've got one.
I was not in the normal, like, you know, podcast setup routine.
Right.
But, you know, wear it with pride. And if you need another one, I want to give you one, because you really do inspire by example. So thank you. Thank
Absolutely.
you so much.
Yeah. I think I was maybe the 5th person to ever get a shirt. So I hold that with
early adopter.
Yeah, exactly. It's a big moment for me. So I appreciate your time too, Ben. Thanks for having me on. I also want to share, like, thank you for doing the same thing. Thanks for influencing people with your personality and the things you do around your life, and letting people see the happiness you get out of certain things, and wanting to do that for themselves. And really, Ben, you're a person that can keep pushing and pushing and pushing in a very positive way to see the finish line. And like, obviously hardship happens, but you're a person that when you've experienced a lot, and you have that passion for people, and that of pursuit, and you bring that to people. Like, if you see someone down, you don't obviously go in guns a-blazing, but you definitely bring them into a different place. So you're doing great things too, and I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Appreciate it, Chase.
All right.